Voila. So welcome everyone to our inspiring IAPC&M author series, which you can find on our blog and which complements our book review club, which remains a great source of tools and a great success. So if you are a practitioner wanting, dreaming, struggling, very probably to add a book to your business strategy, then you're in the perfect place, because guests will not only be sharing about their writing and their publishing story, but also what having a book did for their business. So today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome all the way from the States, life and leadership coach Paul Boehnke, author of Thoughts on Demand, and subtitled Turn Negative Self-Talk into Unstoppable Confidence. So I think we all want to do that. I certainly need to do with reading that. So first of all, congratulations, Paul. No minor feat to actually get your book out there. So maybe today I turn things around and instead of starting with the why, I start with, well, what has publishing this book actually done for your business?
Great question. Thanks for the invitation to be here. So really, the book has done a number of different things. I mean, the most obvious is it's really sort of opened doors for me to be able to speak to a lot of different groups. It's almost like a business card that you can say, here is something that I've done. Here is something that I know something about, and it lends a certain amount of credibility. I spoke last fall at the International Coach Federation's Global Conference in Florida, and I know that book, the fact that I had a book, helped to sort of open some doors and make it
put you in a different league, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the most gratifying part for me is when I hear from people who have read it and hear about the changes that they've experienced in their own lives. So that's a more personal gratification or satisfaction that I find from it.
Right. And how do you, how do you use it? Do you sell it? Do you give it for free at seminars? How do you actually use it in your business?
Yes, actually all of the above. It is certainly for sale. You can find it on Amazon, and I've got all the different varieties, whether it's in print or as an ebook or an audio book. So it's really available in all sorts of ways. That helps because people like different things.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. And so I certainly sell it there. I do sell it in the back of the room when I'm, speaking at places. I occasionally, depending on the topic that I'm speaking on, will give one or two away to people in the audience. That's always kind of a fun thing to do.
Like a prize or something.
The book. Yeah, yeah. And it just spreads the word and it feels generous and it's just a fun thing to do.
It is. And people love it, don't they?
Yes, they do.
It's got nothing to do with money. We all love being given, we feel like we've done well if we've been given something.
Yes.
Okay. So, go ahead.
Yeah, my favorite experience of having given some books away was at a conference where I was speaking to, I don't know, about 100 coaches or so. And before we started, I put 3 books in 3 different envelopes and taped them to the bottom of the chairs. And so when people came in, they just sat down. And at the end, we had this little reveal that there are 3 people out there who get to win this book. And so everybody was looking under their chair. And if they didn't, they would run around and find another chair. It was really great fun.
Well, what a great idea to do it that way, because you're actually, creating something memorable right at the end. So that what they're taking with them is, and he had this fun game where that's very clever, actually. I've never heard of anyone do that before.
Yeah.
Well done. Creativity. Yeah. Right. Okay. So then, Paul, so you've had your business, I imagine, for a certain amount of years, etc. Why did you want to write a book?
Well, I guess there's a couple of different things that sort of came to mind. I knew that having a book would be beneficial to the business, to lend some credibility. So that was certainly present there. The topic is something that I have dealt with and thought about and worked with for many years. And so I felt like I actually have something worthwhile to say. That was, the biggest reason, because I thought this might contribute something to the world.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the title, turning negative self-talk into confidence, I mean, that covers everything and everyone, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Sometimes I feel like I have learned everyone's dirty little secret. And what I have discovered is that it's all the same secret. We tell ourselves we're not good enough in some way or another.
Yeah.
And
including why most of us haven't got a book out yet.
Exactly. And so that was sort of the impetus for me, is I felt like I think this can make a difference. It can help And the other thing I love about writing is it helps me focus my own thoughts. I learn so much just from the process, whether anybody ever reads it or not. Focusing and gathering my thoughts and sort of putting them together in a way makes me question and understand what I'm thinking and what I'm saying with such clarity.
I think that's a very good one, actually, because of course, I mean, so life and leadership coach, that covers a lot of ground, but to really choose to focus on one underlying factor, which covers basically every single factor that anybody would ever bring to a coach, the negative self-talk, it really makes you ask yourself, what do I actually know, believe, and have to share? So it makes you crystallize your thoughts at a deeper level than just, mentioning a whole bunch of stuff that you do.
Absolutely. It's easy to just sort of talk or to gather ideas. But if you're going to be putting them together, all of a sudden that raises all sorts of questions in your own mind about that. And working through that process and answering those questions, solving those problems really helps to solidify your knowledge, your understanding, and your ability to communicate it.
Yeah, I think it must make you feel even more knowledgeable and also whole. I feel like lots of us have got lots of ideas on lots of topics, based on all our accreditations and our studies and the books that we're reading and the experiences with our clients that we have. But to actually bring it all together and have like a package, it must be very fulfilling, I can imagine, to have a package which is there, which you continue to build to, I guess. Okay, so we covered the why you chose this specific topic, because you saw it as a underlying factor in everything that you were doing. So you thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But then how do you proceed from there? Because the world is vast. Where do you know even where to start? How many chapters are you going to have? What aspects are you going to cover? What tone of voice are you going to do? Are you going to have exercises or quotes? Or, I mean, to me, it just seems like I wouldn't even know where to start.
It is a big project. And I think the important first step is really to take that first step, whatever that is for you. In talking with some editors and publishers, in books of this type, they say it's always great to have something at the end of each chapter, some little action step that people can take to put it.
Right.
Okay, that's a good idea. Where I started was I understood the process that I use with my clients that I wanted to outline in the book. So that gave some sort of general shape. And I also knew that books I had read that were the most moving to me were the ones that seemed to be written out of a real sense of presence, that there wasn't this sort of intellectual plan that they simply stuck to, but there were things that arose out of the writer while they were writing. And so I wanted to make that a huge part of what I did. So I sort of set up a little ritual for myself. I tend to get up early in the morning. So I would get up early in the morning, I'd light a little candle. I have a little, what do I want to say, sort of writer's affirmation, shall we say, about here I am, I'm showing up. My job is to listen and to write when I hear things, something that sort of got me centered and ready. And
that's
then
a very good tip.
Yeah. And then I knew some topics, that I needed to cover. And so I would sit with my computer and wait until I thought, oh yeah, okay, this is what I feel moved to talk about, and just start writing.
And so this you committed to every day, rain or shine, feeling inspired or not inspired. You said, okay, I start the day with sitting down. I do my ritual. I light my candle. I affirm, I open the door to my creativity, and I will stay here even if nothing comes.
Yes. I wasn't so rigid with myself that it has to be every single day, but it was by far just about every day. Life happens and some days it doesn't happen. And so I needed to be kind to myself. I didn't need to be using my own little voice to beat up on me.
Yes. Yes.
But yes.
Yes, that's true. You have to use this in everything you do now,
right? That's right. But that sort of discipline I knew would help the writing. It would help create a habit for myself. Doing that early in the morning when it's quiet and dark was satisfying to me. Having a little candle and a place that I would be with a cup of tea it helped me.
But as you say, with gentleness, not
Yeah.
that you're going to sit down and you're going to, splurt
Yes.
out so many words. It's with gentleness and sort of hand in hand with your creative self,
Yeah.
rather than, as the naughty. And I mean, I'm hearing you say lots of things, because I'm hearing you say that you drew on your experience with your clients to help you structure what you wanted to have in the book. I hear you saying that you drew from best practices around you, that people said, well, great idea to have at the end of the chapter, something practical that people can, do to crystallize for themselves what they've learned and incubate what was in that particular chapter. Okay, so then you have your structure. How did you know, because this is something that I struggle with, when to stop? To not just keep going from one thing to another thing, and then, oh, this could lead to that, to this, to that. And before you know it, you've got, an Encyclopedia Britannica there instead of a book that's going to help anyone.
Right. I'm not entirely sure how to exactly answer that, because that wasn't such a conscious point. I mean, I knew in general the overall shape of the book because of this process that I use. But then I figured,
Right.
okay, we have to have some sort of introduction. Who the heck am I? Why am I writing this book? What's it about? Okay, we need something about that. And I would write until I sort of got through that information and say, oh, well, there we are. I guess that's enough.
Right. And so then you had to, then your structure was the methodology or the approach that you use with your clients. So you knew that in chapter 1 it would be this, and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5.
Yeah, I mean, actually, there are sort of 4 phases to this process. So I knew about those 4 chapters, and I knew there's going to have to be something at the beginning, at the end. How do you introduce this? How do you conclude this? In the middle of this, I discovered there needed to be another chapter right in the middle that hadn't really occurred to me, but I thought this is something I need to address. So it all really came about quite organically. Yeah, not detached from reality or from an overall giant plan, but really quite organic. It's like, oh, I need to describe this.
I think that in itself is a good tip. It's to really tap into what flows naturally without over intellectualizing about having to define every single second word in your text, or, okay, right. So you have your structure and you wrote everything yourself.
Yes.
Now, then, did you have somebody check it for either, well, first of all, English, but let's say also for, does this even make sense to somebody who doesn't know what I know?
Absolutely. I worked with a couple of different editors. One I sent the initial manuscript to. When I think about what I sent to this person now, I'm a little embarrassed, but okay, this is my first book.
This we want to hear that. This we want to hear. Right. Go ahead.
Yes. And she was very good at sort of reading through very carefully and giving me really detailed feedback about, oh, this is great. This doesn't make sense. Or I think you missed a chance to connect with the audience by telling us more about this. Or she really helped me figure out what this content needs to be and how to organize or reorganize it. And so I almost started over. I mean, at the beginning, that's what it felt like I was
going to. That's very humbling, and it's good for us to hear that.
Yes, but okay, you start moving things around and you realize, oh, this is so much better. It is so much stronger, which provides inspiration to keep going. So then I basically got everything together. And at that point, then I thought, okay, I think this feels good. And I'd gotten feedback from this editor that, yes, this seems to make sense, blah, blah, blah. So I went through then and corrected everything I could about spelling or, punctuation. And then I sent it off to another editor who would read through and make sure we had all the details of English. Do the tenses match? Is that a
that's right. I mean, it has to hold together, right? And it has to not change definitions of words as you go along. Otherwise, everybody gets confused.
Yes. And, what should be capitalized, or how do you punctuate this? Or you might think about changing. So then we went through that whole process, which really tightened things up a lot for me.
These are people that you paid for, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you go and you look for, and you find different sorts of editors. So there's a certain sort of editor who does the outlay of the book, as in the structure and all of that, and another one who does the nitty gritty, as in, as you say, making sure it's all streamlined and the rest.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I think there are probably 2 or 3 different. I could have worked with another 1 or 2 different kinds of editors or things, but this seemed to do the trick for me at this point. Right. Yeah. It helped me look like a good writer.
Costly. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's what we want. And people do judge. I mean, I do a lot of editing for non-native English speakers, and I do say to them, look, you can say whatever you want when you're standing there. We're
Yeah.
listening to so many other cues, but when you write it, you do have to write it right, because otherwise we're a bit like, okay, why should I even read this book if they don't know how to, correct punctuation or whatever it is. So I believe it is important. How did you, so, I'm jumping from one thing to another, but because we're talking about finance at the moment, that's also something which holds a lot of us back, as in most of us cannot expect to make a lot of money from our book, and we often don't do it in order to get, millions in authors' rights or whatsoever. We do it because we have a message that we want to communicate. But at the same time, not everyone has bottomless pockets, where you just can pay. How did you decide on a certain budget and then make it mix, or did you decide, okay, this is going to cost me, this is how much I can put in, and see who I can find to help me for that price?
Yeah. I didn't set out a budget at the beginning. The financial planners of this world would say, "Oh my gosh, really? You didn't?" But
Yeah, I'm
okay,
not one of them,
this
don't
is the
worry.
way I happen to just operate. I knew it was going to cost me some money to do this. I had decided to focus on self-publishing, partly because of just the time that it takes to get things out in the world when you're doing more traditional publishing. That was one of the biggest things. And I thought, okay, that's a whole nother set of hurdles to try to
Yes,
jump over
yes,
just to get into those houses.
yes,
If I self-publish it, it's done and I
yes,
move on.
yes, yes.
So I knew this was going to cost me some money. I didn't really know how much it would or it wouldn't. Um, and there are so many different ways you can go about it. I mean, I know people who spend very little money. You find a little printer you send them the files, you kind of do everything yourself, and it
And it's
gets taken
done.
care of.
Yeah.
I worked with Balboa Press, which is the self-publishing arm of Hay House Press.
Okay.
And there were a number of different reasons that I happened to go with that. And of course, they have a number of different packages for authors. How much help do you need? And how much do they set up, that kind of thing. And so I picked what seemed to work for me. And they were able to help with the design and that kind of thing as
Okay,
well.
so all of that. You had like a package where they did
Yes.
the design okay.
Yes. And they helped get it on Amazon and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I did the audio book myself.
Okay.
I
Oh, you
had
spoke it in yourself.
I did.
Oh, that
There are
sounds
some
fun.
skills that I have. I happen to
Yeah.
have some nice microphones that okay would make this possible. I happen to have software and kind of enjoy that editing process. Before I was a coach, I was a classical musician, so there were some
Right. So
aspects
okay,
of
so
this.
the audio is important to you and you have a good ear for it, right?
Yes, exactly. And so I could spend just a couple of days just okay, read through. Oh, I need to read through this part again, fixing that up. Um, it was not so difficult, but you have to have some skills. If you don't have those, it's probably a good idea just to hire somebody to get that done
Exactly.
because it's just
No, I
easy.
hear you. I mean, if we think that we're talking to, we, the listeners, have not had a book published yet, right? And it is called the 3% Club for a reason, as in there's only 3% of those who start out who actually get their book published.
Yeah,
And I personally believe that the more hurdles, we all have different hurdles. For some people,
yeah,
it's the writing. For some people, it's the technical side. For some people, it's the finance. For some people, it's all of it. To remove the ones which are easily removed, as in getting people to do the bits that you're not good at or don't know how to do. How long would you say, or how long was the process from
it
beginning
was a
from,
couple
okay, I
of
want to write a
years.
book?
Yeah, it was a good couple of years or so. I think the thoughts had been running in my head for a little while, sort of general what I might want to communicate in this book. But I think from the time when I sat down and said, okay, I think I'm actually writing a book now, to when it was published, it was a good couple of years.
So a couple, we're talking about 2, 3 sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So it wasn't real long
doesn't
because
sound
I was
that
fairly
long. Yeah.
disciplined with writing. It wasn't something that required lots of research on my part that I would have to write and then
Mm-hmm,
go
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
study all sorts of different things and then come back. So it was relatively efficient that way. Um, and I think about the people who do struggle with it's not so long and how do I keep going?
Yeah.
One of the things I learned as a musician was that if you keep practicing, things get better. If
Mm.
you just keep showing up.
Mm.
And also sometimes liken it to like a road trip. If you're driving from, let's say you're driving from Amsterdam to Paris, and you get in the car and you're going, it's like, oh my gosh, this is taking so long. Am I ever going to get there? And you get 3/4 of the way there and you say, oh, I'm so tired. I'm just going to turn around and go back home.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't do that because you know the road gets there. You just keep driving.
Just trust you will get there, right? Did you actually
Yes.
talk about accountability? Because that is something that a lot of us have. We start and then we're full of enthusiasm, and then we stop for whatever reason, and
Yeah.
maybe a few years later start again. Did you have like an accountability buddy, or was it just you and your determination to get this book out, which ensured that you didn't give up?
Yeah, it was basically me. I'm pretty good with that. I don't really need a lot of outside of encouragement to sort of keep going on the path. It's something that over the years, I have loved working on lots of different projects, which take a long time.
Right.
That is satisfying to me because that's when the best work gets done. If you don't rush through it,
Yeah.
It takes some patience, but I also find that satisfying because when you do get to the end, it's like, this was worth what I did.
Right.
This is
The harder
something.
the effort, the bigger the reward, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So for me, and as I'm working with my clients, what seems to help most is not motivation, but inspiration. The way most of us use the word motivation, to me, feels like a fear-based motivation, meaning I want to get away from something. I'm going to do this so that bad thing doesn't happen. Really powerful, but usually not terribly long-lasting or sustainable. But if you've got something inspiring that is pulling you to
That's
it,
very wise. Yeah.
that is a different story. Even because then, even when it's like, oh my gosh, this is hard and I'm tired of doing this, if you can bring to mind why, it's like,
Exactly.
oh yeah, but that's why I'm doing this. Okay, this is a downtime, but who cares? I'm going anyway.
That sounds like also a very good thing to do. When you have that, I'm thinking of your morning ritual there and your
Yes.
candle and your affirmation to yourself, to maybe at the beginning when you are, like excited and not in a hysterical way, but excited in that this is what I'm going to deliver, to write that actually down. And so that on the days when one is not quite sure why one is going through this grueling, maybe at times process, that you know why you're doing it, that you remind yourself why you're doing it. It's that inspiring part of it, as in the excitement of sitting down and working further on what you want to leave as a legacy, right? It is a legacy.
Absolutely. There was one, I think maybe even a webinar that I attended about book writing at the beginning of this. And as I recall, I think there were 3 questions that this person asked. Why do you want to write the book? What's in it for me? Why do I want to do this? What's in it for my readers? Why should they care? What's important to them? And why do I want to bring this into the world? How does the world
the bigger, yeah.
Yeah. And I did write that down beforehand. And so that did serve as a way to, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing it.
Right.
And it also helped me as I was writing, check back, say, am I doing those things?
Right.
Or am I getting onto a different path that isn't part of that?
That's right. And to maybe get away from the sort of the ego, wanting to just put out there everything that I know, but to really think, am I answering, the need of the person who's going to read it, and the bigger need of the world? How will the world benefit from knowing what's in that book?
Yes. And I used those ideas mostly, shall we say, when I wasn't writing as such, as I was thinking about writing, what's helpful, or after I'd written says, oh, okay, I've got this. Is this fitting into any of those 3 categories? Does this matter? Because I really wanted to keep the writing part as organic and as present and as improvisatory as I could, because I knew that would be the most compelling kind of writing.
And Paul, you did this in parallel to your work.
Yes.
Because that's one thing I keep saying to myself, oh, well, when I can, take a month or 2 months off from my, from work, I will have time and I will do that. So, of course, it never happens because the clients just keep coming in. And so you never do it. So, I mean, it's really to choose a way which is organic in the way that you can, that you allocate a certain amount of time next to the rest. Now, are you writing another book, Paul?
Not at the moment. You know, there's
Okay.
another one, there's a thought for one, but it's in that gestational stage, and who knows if that will happen or not.
And if you do, or when you get to that stage, will you be repeating exactly the same process, or is there anything you would change?
You know, it's probably going to be about the same.
Worked for you, right?
Yeah, I have no complaints about it so far. Yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see. That part is also going to be kind of organic. I will know, oh, I've got this book. How do I want to do this? Today, this is how I feel moved to work. So,
Well, Paul, it's been a real pleasure. And I think my first sort of feeling and summary is that I've loved in particular the way that you've made it flow, as in there's not that I've got to sit down, I've got to do it, I've got to, all of that fear, as you say, because you're fearful that you're not going to do it, that you're going to give up again, or that. And it's just that you've made it all light and gentle and loving with yourself. So instead of squeezing something out of yourself or making it fit in that way, it's just letting it come up in the right way that works for you. So working hand in hand with our creativity rather than trying to squeeze it into any particular direction.
yes, which interestingly enough is sort of the topic of the book as well, because all those pressures we put on ourselves come from this little voice, and
That's so true.
we don't have to do that.
Very true. And I would recommend your book to everyone. Do you want to repeat the title again?
Sure, it's called Thoughts on Demand, Turn Negative Self-Talk into Unstoppable Confidence. There's a website for that with the same title, thoughtsondemand.org. If people are interested in sort of learning more about that, but
I think we all
and
should,
you
to
can
be honest.
contact me there. I'm happy to talk with anyone about things.
Wonderful. And I hope very much to have you back on a masterclass for that, because I think, as you say, it underlies everything that we do. So, Paul, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and your process to how you became a published author. Enjoy it. Enjoy the feeling. I can imagine it must be a wonderful feeling being a published author and having it in ebook, audio, and in hard copy as well. And looking forward to having you back here, and who knows, to maybe another book. So all the very best, and thank you for sharing with us. And for the rest of us, let's just make it happen.
Thank you.